I was asked to give this title of this talk, "Future of Nutrition Research at NIH," but I remember from my freshman physics course that the physics professors told us that only a physicist could predict the future, and so this is a little disclaimer. So I have no conflicts of interest. I want to talk about NIH's recent, or what we're doing for nutrition research funding. There's been reorganization of nutrition research at the NIDDK, the National Institutes of Diabetes, Digestive Diseases, and Kidney Diseases, leading to the formation of an Office of Nutrition Research. We are engaged in strategic planning for nutrition research across NIH institutes. I'll discuss that, and then I'll touch on some of the interagency activities that our office is doing. So I first want to talk about how NIH's support of nutrition research. In 2015, we awarded scientists close to 4,200 grants, and this amounted to about $1.6 billion in nutrition research funding. We have 26 institutes and centers at NIH, and the leaders in this nutrition funding were my institute, NIDDK, Child Health, Heart, Lung, and Blood, and the National Cancer Institute. The National Cancer Institute does a lot of very surprising things in nutrition research that are not just focused on cancer, but are really basic nutrition research. They have a great group over there. I've been in my position. I've been going around and meeting people who have nutrition portfolios at these different institutes. The subject areas are shown in this slide. So most of the research in nutrition went in the area of disease prevention, then obesity. The next category were clinical research studies, and then things like things affecting the endocrine system, diabetes, genetics, and behavioral research, followed by a number of other categories as shown here. So there's a very healthy funding going on in nutrition research at NIH. Now, there's the largest funder of nutrition research is NIDDK, but there's been some reorganization of the nutrition research there that let me just talk about. So we have this, one of the 26 institutes and centers is the National Institutes of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases, NIDDK. And it's organized as follows. It has the Office of the Director, which has all the policy people and human resource people and communications people and things like that in it. And then it has an intramural branch, research branch, and an extramural research branch. And so in the intramural research branch, we have researchers who work on questions related to NIDDK on the actual physical NIH campus. So one of our intramural researchers is Dr. Hall, who you may have heard about recently. He did this study on the biggest losers, where he was looking at the problems they had with weight regain after that studies, and he's had a number of studies recently in the news. And then most of our resources go to fund extramural resources at various universities. And so, that extramural research is split up. We have a a division of digestive diseases and nutrition. We have a division of diabetes, endocrinology, and metabolic diseases. The first division deals mainly with gastroenterological disorders, pancreas, liver, GI tract, esophageal disorders, things of that nature. And then DEM works on diabetes, inborn errors of metabolism, any metabolic disorders, endocrine, it's things that you'd go to see an endocrinologist about. Obesity research is split pretty much between these two divisions. And so we have an Office of Obesity Research, and so it has two co-directors. One of the co-directors, is in DDN, Susan Yanowski, and the other, Phil Smith, is in the DEM, the diabetes, the diabetes division. And then we have a division of kidney, urological, and hematological diseases. And then as part of our previous organization, we had another branch called the Division of Nutrition Research Coordination. Now, a couple of years ago, we had an external review of nutrition research here, and this last division of nutrition research coordination was not doing that much extramural research. They were coordinating nutrition research across the various institutes and centers and interagency efforts. But it was decided that, and after an external review, that division should be eliminated, and that an Office of Nutrition Research, similar to the Office of Obesity Research, should be created. So that Office of Nutrition Research was created, and it answers to the director of NIDDK, and then it also has a line to help organize nutrition research within the Division of Digestive Diseases and Nutrition. So I'm the director of the Office of Nutrition Research and chief of the nutrition research in this other division, DDN. So then all of these, the other division that was eliminated didn't have any research programs that they were funding extramurally, and so now, we should be doing more, nutrition research with this office. So the Office of Nutrition Research is responsible for leadership of nutrition research within NIDDK and across the institutes and other agencies. We participate in strategic and portfolio analysis, budget and resource allocation, and assessment of research needs and opportunities that fall within the mission of NIDDK and NIH. We're currently engaged in strategic planning of new NIH research initiatives, and our office directs a nutrition coordinating committee, which had been meeting before the elimination of this other division, and we're going to reconstitute it again to improve inter-organization and interagency research coordination. And our office is a nutrition research point of contact for other government agencies and non-government organizations such as ILSI. So they say in the Office of Obesity Research is a virtual office, and that we actually have an actual office. So I'm the director. We have a lawyer, PhD, Sheila Fleischhacker, who works with me. Karen Regan, who's an analyst for us. She's very good at doing portfolio analysis. She's a registered dietitian. And then Rachel Fisher is working with me on strategic planning, and so she's an MPH and master's degree registered dietitian. So our office has been tasked by Francis Collins to develop an NIH-wide strategic plan for nutrition research. And my area, before I came here, was I was a scientist. It was very narrow. So nutrition research is very broad. So I had to come up with a strategy to develop an NIH-wide strategic plan for nutrition research. The first thing I did to start this process was to survey the literature. And a number of publications have already appeared with people's ideas about where the government should go with nutrition research. We've been looking at that. So the American Society of Nutrition published nutrition research needs. We had an interagency plan. We have this interagency committee on human nutrition research, and they recently released a nutrition research roadmap. Now, this roadmap is for research, where research should go in nutrition for the next 5 years, but for all of the agencies, for instance, USDA and CDC and other agencies, not just the NIH. So we have to carve out of this what areas are in NIH's wheelhouse. ASPEN, which is a medical nutrition society, has developed published a research agenda. We have because we are interested in prebiotics and probiotics, we looked at the National Microbiome Initiative. The Institute of Medicine also has published a dietary reference intake report. They have a list of needs that they would like to have done. We have the dietary guidelines. To develop the dietary guidelines for Americans, there was a dietary guidelines advisory report that had a laundry list of things that needed to be done. ILSI devised a scientific trend report which had things that they thought that needed research areas that they thought should be done. At the Child Health Institute, they developed they had a workshop to look at birth to 24 months, what needed to be done research needed to be done in that space, and what needed to be done before birth for infants, what kind of nutrition research needed to be done there. And then other colleagues, David Allison, David Clurfield, have written papers. There was one in Frontiers, a journal called Frontiers, called Goals in Nutrition Science. And so then, we sort of try to funnel all these to find, common, to look for common themes. And so, we are basically going through these to identify common areas, because it's hard to have an original idea. A lot of these things have common themes to them. And so these weren't the only reports we found. There was a big data symposium, so we're very interested in this, in the promises that, looking at all these databases that exist, credit card purchases, where food is placed on supermarket shelves, data about that, and flow patterns and how people go through supermarkets, and and traffic patterns and all kinds of things that affect us, social media, how these things all work into what we eat, and dietary patterns and things like that, medical health records and things like that. The NHLBI, our Heart Institute, had developed a report where they were trying to promote increased nutrition in medical education. They had a report about that we looked at. The American Heart Association has had scientific statements where they've asked for new research. NHLBI, the Heart Institute, had a lifestyle report which had research needs. The NICHD, the Child Health Institute has also published goals. American Diabetes Association has had several workshops where they have had research recommendations that we looked at. There was an NIH Microbiome workshop that focused mainly on metabolomics and metabolites and what needed to be done in that space that had research needs. And then the Office of the President's, the Science Policy Office had a microbiome fast-track report where it indicated what needed to be done in the microbiome space. So again, we've taken, tried to take all of these and, and look at them for unique ideas, but also to, where the common themes are. So that's the approach we started with. We found that in looking at these common themes that they could be distilled in about 4 areas. The first areas were things like experimental design, with sort of a big kitchen sink experimental design, tool and method development, and nutrition research infrastructure. So nutrition research infrastructure would have things like many scientists in labs across the country may not have access to things that they would need to help do nutrition research, like maybe mass spectrometers or instruments where you can put an animal in and it tells you, how fat they are, or instruments that will record the minute-to-minute activity of animals, food and water intake, how they behave with for exercise, and monitoring their oxygen and CO2 consumption, so you can figure out whether they're burning fat or carbohydrate or something like that. In the microbiome space and also in the big data space, we need development of tools, computational models, and things like that. And then another area which ILSI sponsored a workshop on has to do with experimental design, for instance, improving the rigor of preclinical and clinical nutrition research, and having scientists recognize sources of errors and bias errors and things like that. Another sort of bucket area that these people's ideas fell into had to do with basic and translational nutrition research. So translational nutrition research, so that would be things like elucidating the key drivers of food choice and nutritional behaviors, molecular mechanisms of nutrient signals, factors underlying the variability in metabolic and physiological responses to diet. Those are the kinds of things that would go into that area. Then we have applied nutrition research. So that could be, for instance, is it better to give parenteral or enteral nutrition in the hospital for a particular disorder, and things like that. So it could be medical, but also things like how, what's the relative effectiveness of social or economic or policy factors in modifying dietary behavior. That's another example of maybe an applied nutrition area. And then the last area had to do with nutrition research training. To do some of these things that we'd like to do, like using this big data, we need to train more scientists in how to use those kind of tools. Some of the big data projects require a lot of collaboration between big teams to solve big problems, and so we need to have the students have more experiential exposure to working in a big team environment instead of just working in a small laboratory bay, by themselves on their own project. They need to, develop the tools to be able to, work in large teams to solve large problems. And then another area is increasing the nutrition education of our physicians. Most people are going to their physicians as their first stop for dietary advice. Many diseases can be modified by diet, and people should be, people are frequently asked to go to their physician before they start a new diet or something like that. But the amount of nutrition education in medical school is very small. And so, we need to develop strategies to improve that, either MD, PhD programs that involve nutrition, or increasing nutrition education in the postgraduate education when the people are in residencies and things like that. And so, so these are some of the ideas that came out of this literature search. So the next thing we're going to do is take these common themes and ideas, and we've used that to develop a sort of a framework that we're now seeking input. We've developed a kind of a framework or outline that has explanations for what the different categories or things mean, and we're seeking input about that framework right now from the people within my own institute who have nutrition portfolios. And then the next thing we'll do is to, share that framework more widely within the nutrition nutrition program people in the other institutes and centers. And then once that is done and we get an idea of this looks like a good framework and people are buying into it, we'll form a writing group and write a draft. The draft will then be internally vetted. The directors of each institute and center will have to, agree to, what's come out of that. And then we'd have a period of external commenting and input from scientists on the outside that we'd reflect about and would modify the plan. And then the next step would be adoption and implementation. So that's my current task. A main thing that we're working on, and now is to try and get that going. Now we have a number of other activities we're involved in. So our members actively participated in the development of the Nutrition Research Roadmap, this interagency committee of nutrition, human nutrition and research that developed. I co-chair this IHNR, it's a little easier to say, their subcommittee on dietary reference intakes with David Clearfield at USDA, and that group participates in the joint U.S. and Canadian-sponsored DRI working group. Doing these dietary reference intakes is very expensive, and so the United States and Canadian governments have had a long history of working together to help co-fund those. And there's a very nice working relationship with Health Canada colleagues on that. Dr. Collins asked me, because I was new to, and they felt I didn't have anything to do, to be NIH's representative to the National Science and Technology Council's committee. It's a long committee name on Committee on Sciences, Subcommittee on Food and Agriculture, and the Subcommittee on Life Sciences Microbiome Interagency Working Group. And I'm NIH's representative to the National Science Technologies Committee on, I guess I said that already, on Subcommittee on Food and Agriculture. So in the dietary reference intake space, since this is being recorded, I'm just going to tell you what I'm allowed to publicly talk about. And in the next, very shortly, there will be a report from the Dietary Reference Intakes and Chronic Disease Endpoint workshop. I think that's going to be in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. The report was submitted for publication on 2016, and the idea of this is to starting to look at the feasibility of not only DRIs are for healthy people, but the question is, what about people who are not healthy, and also, should we have values of nutrients that might either prevent disease or might be affecting disease endpoints, for example, like blood pressure. And so then we have another thing going on, guiding principles for DRIs and chronic disease endpoints. So this subcommittee that I'm co-chair on has a working group which is collaborating with the National Academy of Sciences. They changed their name. I liked Institute of Medicine. It was easier to say IOM. To develop guiding principles for the inclusion of chronic disease endpoints to be used by committees setting future DRIs. And so, some of the questions that they'll be looking at some of the practical questions about, how would you do this? Would you have a DRI with a sub-letter or something that indicated it was the lower limit to prevent a certain disease or something like that? Those sort of issues have to be worked out. How would what would you name those DRIs, for example? And so that project will build on the 2015 workshop panel discussions and the pending workshop report, and that project has just begun. And we hope to get the report completed by the fall of 2017. And then in preparation for an anticipated review of DRIs, and the Office of the President said, we're doing sodium again? In preparation for that, we're expected to do a DRI for sodium and potassium. So we have an interagency contract with ARC to do a systematic evidence review that will start this summer, and the evidence report for that is expected to be completed by 2017. And then discussions are underway now with the IOM for a DRI review of sodium and potassium, and that proposed review would begin in 2017. This is an interagency effort, so all the agencies are asked for funds to contribute to that. And actually, that's a lot of our work, is to try and convince people to give money towards these efforts. And then that will draw on the guiding principles for chronic disease endpoints and the systematic evidence review from ARC. And then we have this Microbiome Interagency. We have a lot of things going on in the microbiome at NIH and between agencies. I went and looked at the clinicaltrials.gov the other day, and I think there's about 160 fecal transplant clinical trials that have been registered for not just for C. difficile, but for was about 10 for obesity and diabetes, and there's other ones for a wide variety of diseases, some inflammatory diseases and things like that. So it's a very interesting time and important subject. So the Microbiome Interagency Working Group was established by OSTP's committees and subcommittees. And it's tasked with developing a federal strategic plan for microbiome research. And so the plan should provide ideas for improving coordination of microbiome research among and between federal agencies, along with international groups. And they would like that to actually have some meat to it to outline the steps and timelines for implementation and dissemination of that plan. And then I'm also on the subcommittee on food and agriculture. This actually hasn't met yet. And so the purpose of this subcommittee is to identify science and technology opportunities for creating sustainable food and a sustainable food and agriculture system. And again, to coordinate interagency strategies to leverage these opportunities, to support a diversity of stakeholders in rural and urban food production, and to include issues surrounding soil health in developing recommendations and to develop recommendations for improving food safety and nutrition and to incentivize innovation in food processing. And this is only probably one interagency activity in this space that I'm aware of several actually. So that's about it in a nutshell, and I'll be glad to take any questions. Hi.
And, and so what are the research programs that you advocate or are funding to help us identify either different mechanisms of action that we can use or different alternatives in both the areas of sodium and sugar?
We have to remember this is National Institutes of Health, so I think that a lot of that research might be in USDA space.
Well, the argument of these are health issues, right? I mean, that's the reason we're supposedly doing this.
Yeah, but I don't think the research would be on how we could change the food to, make it more palatable or something like that. It will be about the consequences of reducing sodium and or in populations or something like that. I don't see it working in that space.
Thank you. This was very interesting to hear the plan moving forward on nutrition research. Kathy Weimer from General Mills. Question, you talked about sort of the process and you'll have the draft report. What time frame are you anticipating that would be available for external review?
We haven't decided that yet, but I think it would be sufficiently long, and we would, we actually have a long list of outside stakeholders such as ILSI that would be sent to, and we'll probably employ an outside company that will help us collect the comments and help us respond to them. All right, cheers. Thanks for having me.
We got one more question in the back.
Better late than never. What's your view on personalized medicine and personalized nutrition? The microbiome is very personalized to all of us, for example, and you have quite a bit of thought on that. But just your thoughts on polymorphism.
Well, this is a key. This is an area that Francis Collins is very interested in, and so this came up in a lot of these plans. So that'll very much be a part of that. I feel in the future maybe we won't be having these DRIs so much, but we'll be using this big data or something to individualize people's needs based on their genetics, microbiome, and things like that. That having a one value or something like that won't be where we're at in the future. And so he's much more interested in nutrition research when we talk about looking at Dr. Collins, when we talk about looking at that, making personalized nutritional advice for people. And so I think that is actually part of many of these plans. It's part of understanding the variability in people's responses to nutrients, and that fits into that.
So just following up on that, given the conversation we've had about sodium and potassium, that's the type of thing that could potentially impact that in the future, do you think?
Well, yeah, because some people are sensitive to sodium and so might need to go much less. When I left, it's amazing that it's also just in the response of people to diet, and animals to diet. Like there's this famous study by a guy named Les Kozak down in Pennington, where he put 120 genetically identical animals on a diet that was more of like a Western diet. And some of them don't gain any weight at all, and some of them would double or triple their weight, and then they had ones in between. We see the same thing with sodium. We have some people where we can bring them in and give them a sodium challenge, and their blood pressure will go up, and other people, and so that's very interesting to find what the underpinnings, and so what the underpinnings of that is.
Thank you.
Excellent. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, go ahead, please.
Just a quick one. It's Stephanie Atkinson from McMaster University in Canada. I just wondered if you've had a chance to connect with your counterpart in Canada, the Institute of Nutrition, Metabolism and Diabetes of the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, which is our NIH. So our scientific director is Dr. Phil Sherman. Ricky Yatta and I have been on the advisory board. And it's interesting that the target areas that you're so far have kind of identified are ones that we've had programmatic grants and in the microbiome, in food and health, including the sodium issue and healthy body weights. And so there are a lot of synergies and maybe opportunities for co-funding of research across borders.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that co-funding of research between borders. I mean, we are funding, we are working on these dietary reference intake studies. The people I've met already at Health Canada are really great to work with. So I would like to meet those people. That would be great. If you can help make it happen, I'll be glad to do that. Yeah.
Hey, everybody, please join me in thanking you.